Hey guys, and welcome to another episode of Europe in Detail. And in this episode we are building something really cool on a prominent part of the waterfront. We are going to be building a hotel resort complete with like these cliffside spa things that you'll see a bit later on. But uncannily, somebody actually asked to build a hotel resort in the comment section of the last episode. Admittedly, they did say build one from Spain, and this is not in Spain, obviously, but yeah, I thought that was quite a coincidence, as I had started building this, well before that episode was made. But anyway, let's talk about this episode. So the inspiration for this build has come from the coast of Cinque Terre itself, so basically where I've based this on. If we have a look on Google Earth, you can see there's these amazing, they look like ancient hotels. Some of them are actually like carved into the rock faces, others are a little bit more modern, and they mostly all have these like really nice pool areas overlooking these coastal waters, which you could imagine the view from in these pools and around these hotels would just be spectacular. I started going through the assets in my head to make sure that I actually had everything that I needed. I don't want to load up on too many assets, I want to sort of use what I've already got. And I also build most of the area with pedestrian paths as well, so we've got real citizens moving through here when it's finished, and I hide a couple of little cube services as well, so it looks like there's a whole lot of people in and around the pools. So that was the basic idea for the whole area, and now was the fun part, having to build it all. And I'm not sure about you guys, but I know I am much more efficient if I know exactly what it is I'm going to build before I get into the game. And 9 times out of 10, whatever I build without a clear plan or a clear vision never really lives up to my expectations, and I end up deleting it anyway. So that may actually sound familiar if you've followed the series. So here on camera you've seen me run a really dodgy road up the side of this hill here that I'm making steeper with Grey Flames rocks. And this is going to lead up to a little wee car park that's going to service an old church and mostly this hotel area that we're building. And as crazy as this road may look, this is pretty normal for this part of the Italian coast. Looking at Google Earth, look at these roads. I mean, if you're not a confident driver, you'd be shitting your pants, for a lack of a better term. And I really wanted to include that here, and even though it's only a short stretch of road, I think we get that vibe. Now, I've also had some comments from people that have either visited the area or lived in the area, I'm not too sure, but they were saying that there's a pedestrian path that connects 5 or 6 of these little villages that runs right across the coastline, which I think is pretty darn cool. And I mention that because I'm going to have the start of that pedestrian path that runs around my little coastline starting off at the top of this road here. It's going to come around the cliff and down through our little wee spa area that we're going to build, and then it's going to go out the back and along the coast again, and we're going to build it out the back in a later episode. I hadn't added any churches into Borgovino yet, so I knew that I was overdue in putting one in. I do have plans to make a very detailed church and surrounding area in a later episode, but up here seemed like such a cool and appropriate area to put one, so I've put one up here, the very first one in this little town. So I flattened the hill off behind the cliff that we made, and it's just enough area to get this church up on the opposite side that the hotel's going to go on. And I also make some little grounds that go with it as well, and some ancient walls that may have been ruined or eroded over time, and then I can move on to placing in the hotel. So I found this building here that I thought looked appropriate and turned it into procedural objects, and I'm actually going to put them split level style down the cliffside on the coastal side of this hill. And I guess the idea here is to try and make them look like they've sort of been made in the rock, or they've been, they've dug out the hillside or the cliffside to create these buildings, and then nature's done its thing, erosion and all the rest of it, and they sort of just look like part of the cliffside now. I also wanted to make sure that pedestrians could move through this area okay, so I do have to set it out with some stone decks and some stairs and access from each level. And I've chosen this stone seawall because it looks really weathered and old, and it just suits perfect. Everything about it is just right, and it's really easy to put down as well. The stairs, however, were far from easy, especially these ones that zigzag up the middle that you'll see. They were very difficult to put in. In fact, I just gave up on having real pedestrians move up that particular part. They're actually just going to go through one of the doors to these buildings and up to the car park area. The other path that runs around the coast hasn't been changed though, and some of the citizens later on use that path, which looks really cool. So just quickly guys, on another note, I'm going to take a guess and say we've probably only got about 2 or 3 episodes left in Borgovino before we move on to the next little village. So what I need from you guys is any suggestions of what you would like to see in this little wee village here, Borgovino, before we move on to that next one. And if you're a little bit sad that we're moving away from Borgovino, don't be, because the next village is going to be very much the same style. It's still going to be that Italian coastal style, but just a different layout, with different attractions and things like that. So I am going to need your guys' help and input with that as well, if you're interested, of course. So check it out, we get to put the pools in now, which is of course the fun part, and I've got this really cool looking pond asset that's got a nice blue colour to it with a nice texture, and I thought this would make a great basis for our pools. So I PO these so I can change the shape and size a little bit, and I also lower one down a bit so it's a little bit lower, but both of them are hanging off the cliff a little bit, you'll notice. And that is because I want these to be what they call infinity edge pools or spas, and that is when you're sitting in them you do not see the far edge of it, it just looks like it just sort of blends in with the ocean and with the view, and it looks magnificent. I use Los Gecko's stone retaining wall, and once that's in I can start finishing the cliff, and I use Vecchio Cristo's rock prop here and just lay them in a random fashion so it looks like these pools are really just a part of this cliff. I also look to put some just normal boulder style rocks at the bottom of the cliff, so it looks like parts of it have fallen away and eroded over time. You'll also see me slide in a little wee asset that looks like a hot water spa next to the main pool. Then we can zoom in a bit closer and detail it up. First thing on the agenda details wise was like an old decal for the ground, like a cracked paver or something, with grass growing through it or something like that, something that looked aged. And I ended up choosing this one here that sort of looks really crazy, just a random pattern with grass growing between them, which I thought was pretty appropriate. I also use a similar cracked paving decal, but a red one for the rest of the decks, and I add some like little handrails around those as well, a couple of little wee gardens here and there, and you'll also see me put in like a little steam maker just above the 2 hot pools. Now I know this part is going to be really highly viewed being right on the coast as well, so I make a point to add a few other little wee props and details here and there, things like towels and little wee plants and bushes growing up the walls, and I think I put a few tables and chairs in here as well, and yeah, it's fair to say I go pretty hardcore. So normally if I was building an area like this with pedestrian paths moving through it, I would have those pedestrian paths in place first and then build around them. But this was such a complex build and I didn't have a 100% vision for what it was going to look like. I just knew the basic layout, that I've been forced to sort of put these in. This is never an easy task because the paths can be a little bit fiddly, but Node Controller has made this a little bit easier, and I knew that I was going to put these in during the build, so I've tried to make it easier for myself. And once I get those into place, the pedestrians start moving through here pretty quickly, which is great. It means the paths are obviously efficient at moving somewhere or another. And I also put in a couple of cube surfaces here as well, and use Max Surgy's spawn points mod to change the service area back up to the car park by the church. So the last thing I do down here on this cliffside is I had a bit of a second thought, and I wanted to put in an old broken sort of a stone dock here, because when we look at the coastline here, there's a lot of these. They look like they've been here for hundreds of years. Lord knows if they're used now or not, but I love the character of them. I love, thinking about why they were built there and who built them and what they may have been used for, and what they've seen in their time. So I'm going to try and capture the real bespoke nature, the broken, bespoken nature of these sort of dock areas here with this little last bit of this cliff. This top deck here is the last one I have to detail, and I keep this pretty simple, just some old stone decals on the ground and a nice garden in the middle, with the more appropriate things as well, like handrails and stuff of course in place as well. But actually, looking back at this now, I think I may go back and put like a restaurant up here. This seems like such an appropriate place to have like the restaurant for the hotel, or at least a few tables and chairs out here, making the most of this view. And you can see now too that we've got heaps of people streaming in here. They're all coming up to the Cube service and just hanging out in our spa area. So you'll see me buzz around here and finish off the last of the detailing, and then the last thing we do to finish the episode is complete the car park out the front. And I also put in a little wee like fountain and sort of an entrance area, a more formal entrance area. I'm so pleased to add another really unique part to the town. I've got some nice nighttime shots here as well, and there's a really nice mood going on around these pool areas, especially at night. I would love to be just laying back in one of these with a beer, just enjoying the beautiful fresh air. If any of you guys can think of a name for the resort, let me know in the comments, but I hope you've enjoyed the episode, guys. I hope to see you on the next one. Hit that thumbs up if you've enjoyed it, and I will see you guys on the next episode of Europe in Detail. See ya!